Thousands of people opened their newspapers this morning to find a special quake insert. Experts want you to be ready for the next big one. That's why an oversized pamphlet in several languages, even Braille, was produced. The guide features some rather hair-raising statistics and warnings about earthquakes, but tells readers how to drastically reduce the chances of being victims. And if you even glanced at this, you know it was a big job putting it together, making sure people got it out. Seismologist Peter Ward was the man behind it, the author of The Next Big Earthquake, and he's here with us today. Welcome, Peter.
Good evening.
Why was this important? Do people think they're more ready than they really are?
Well, first of all, we wanted people to understand that earthquakes may be more of a problem for us in the next few decades than they have been in our lifetime. I mean, Loma Prieta is the first damaging earthquake most of us have experienced. But in the 1800s, there were earthquakes of that size about one every decade. And so we see there's a potential problem. And the second main message is that if we as a community take action, we can drastically reduce the amount of damage that is going to occur in these inevitable earthquakes.
Give us some examples, Peter, quickly, of the kinds of things people can do that really do make a difference.
Well, first is to be prepared, is to have some emergency supplies, to have a plan with your family at work, to know what you're going to do in case of an earthquake, to be sure that you're able to get through the disaster. But secondly, there's a question of preparing your home to make it safer. I mean, most of us are safe in our homes, you know, the single-story wood frame homes, but if we make sure they're bolted to the foundation, if we make sure the short walls, the cripple walls between the foundation and the first floor are properly braced in the older homes, then we can say that most of the homes will be safe in the Bay Area. We can check into other buildings and determine whether those are potentially safe or not. There are certain types of buildings that we know from experience are going to fall and kill people in an earthquake. These can be identified in advance, and in the booklet we try to explain, at least in brief, what some of those kinds of buildings are.
You know, the cover of the book says in the Bay Area the next big one may come sooner than you think, and there's a very interesting graph on page 16 which seems to imply some kind of a mate theory if in fact we are moving into an era that's more like the 1800s than the 1900s have been. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, following 1906, the major earthquake in 1906 seemed to have relieved the strain in the Bay Area. And we had very little earthquake activity until 1979, and the first large earthquake since that time was the Loma Prieta earthquake last year. But prior to that time, there were many earthquakes on a regular basis, and we believe we may be coming back into a period of activity. In 1865, there was an earthquake much like Loma Prieta in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Only 3 years later, in 1868, was what was called the Great San Francisco Earthquake at that time. It was on the Hayward Fault in the East Bay, but it did significant damage throughout San Francisco, and only to be surpassed by the 1906. So we're wondering at this point. We don't know for sure, but officially we're saying there's a 67% chance that at least one magnitude 7 earthquake will occur within the next 30 years. And it could occur at any time.
One of the things that interested me that this has a lot of very simple, down-to-earth, practical advice. I mean, right down to fixing kitchen cabinet doors. So a lot of people worked on this, Peter, right?
Well, over 100 people were involved in reviewing the text in one way or another. I mean, we really feel this is a consensus summary of what we know about earthquakes and how people can protect themselves. I mean, we face many, many hazards in our life. Earthquakes is just one of those hazards. And we think if people take reasonable response to this, take reasonable action, we can prevent much life loss and much dollar loss in the next earthquake.
Very quickly, according to these graphs, that the next earthquake that comes, if it hits one of these faults closer to the Bay Area, could in fact cause a lot more shaking. Could we hold damage down to what it was at Loma Prieta? Is there any possibility of holding damage to below that, or is it going to be more damage in this area regardless?
Well, it depends how long between now and the earthquake and how much action we take between now and then. I mean, if the earthquake hits tomorrow, there's going to be a lot more damage than there was in Loma Prieta. Hayward Fault earthquake may cause as much as $70 billion worth of damage, whereas Loma Prieta was $6 billion, so there's a difference of a factor of 11 or 12. But if we have a little time and everybody takes action, we can hold the damage down significantly.
Peter Ward, thank you for being with us. It's a terrific idea. Well done, too.
Thank you.